In this video, I'm going to demonstrate some of the features of a technology called Swagger. Among other things, the Swagger ecosystem has tools that help you create, document, and consume RESTful APIs. At the core of this ecosystem is the Swagger specification. The Swagger specification defines how you characterize a set of RESTful endpoints. Here I have up, for example, the Swagger specification for the Sync Gateway REST endpoints for the public API. And I have it up on the Swagger online editor. You can see the spec file is actually a human readable file. It's pretty straightforward to understand. The Swagger editor has a lot of nice features to help you build out your spec, but that's not actually what I'm going to focus on here. What I'd like to demonstrate instead is this active documentation that has been generated automatically from that specification. If you take a look at what's going on in the right-hand panel, we can see here, for example, that I have a post method. This post method is one of the REST endpoints that allows us to create a new document in Couchbase. What's great about this is not only is this documentation generated automatically, but it's actually live. What I mean by that is that if we look down here, I can actually fill in some parameters for this request and then go ahead and actually try it out. So for example, let's go ahead and create the contents of a document. Very simple. Key value pair. Save that. Go ahead and specify the database. Now you see down below it's actually filled in what the REST endpoint looks like for that. And then I can scroll down and go ahead and hit send request. Now I have Sync Gateway running on my machine, and so this request succeeded, and you can see the results down here. This does generate a cross-origin call. I needed to configure my Sync Gateway to accept that call, and I'll show the configuration file in the blog that goes along with this video. Now let's take a quick look at the Couchbase Sync Gateway administration console and see what that created. If we go here and reload, we'll see now that there's a document there. And if I click on that, we can see the contents, and you see that it has the key value pair that I put in, and also some of the metadata needed for Couchbase Mobile. So just to re-emphasize the point, that was done through the online Swagger editor here at swagger.io. So that shows an instance of generating live documentation where I can actually test out my REST endpoints directly through this. Swagger is open source, so for example, you can actually download and run the editor locally if you want. Here you can see that I have the same tool running locally on my own machine. Now, beyond building things in the editor and generating live documentation, what are some of the other cool things you can do? Well, one of the great things is that Swagger can generate both server and client SDKs automatically from the spec. I've been working with a Swagger client to write Node applications that consume the changes feed from Sync Gateway. This has allowed me to build an event-driven application that I describe in some other blog posts. If we go ahead and click on this, we can see that Swagger supports a really large number of different languages. You can also find other projects that generate Swagger clients that are a little bit more idiomatic to the language. So for example, JavaScript, there's the Swagger.js client. It runs off the same specification. So you feed it the specification file. You can do that a couple different ways. That gives you a nice client that you can use either synchronously, or for instance, you can turn on the promise version of it and use JavaScript promises to run things asynchronously. That's one thing I like about Swagger right there, is it takes away writing a bunch of boilerplate code that's standard for consuming REST APIs. So it's great that you can do this in the editor, but what about getting that documentation into your regular documentation? So next I'll show here, for example, what it looks like. You can easily embed the Swagger documentation, again generated automatically, into standard documentation site. Here is the documentation for the public REST API for Sync Gateway. We scroll down, we have our API Explorer section here. And you see you get this really nice colorful breakdown of all of your REST endpoints. It's got the descriptions, all the parameters you need, and again, it's going to be active. I restarted my Sync Gateway behind the scenes, so now I'm just going to go ahead and fill in some of these parameters quick. Let's give it a different key value pair. Go to one of the classics so that you can see that it's something different, and go ahead and hit this try it out. See, first it shows you what the curl command would be if you wanted to do this straight from the command line. The endpoint for the REST call, the response body, our response code, 200 here, shows that it succeeded, and some headers. So in this case, we had to get back a content type to specify that it's a JSON response. So that's all cool. Now if we go back to the admin panel for Sync Gateway and take a look, we can drill down into the document, into the database, and we'll see that there's this new document here. It's got a different document ID, different revision, and it's got those contents that I just put in. So that's really cool. So that was just a really quick look at Swagger and what Swagger provides. I think it's incredibly valuable to have this for documentation purposes. That live capability to go and try things out directly is really nice. And of course, having the clients where now I can simplify writing a lot of my code because I don't have to worry about things like all the boilerplate stuff of forming my HTTP calls, checking my responses, all of this handled, a lot of that's handled for you nicely with these clients. Just makes consuming REST APIs a lot simpler. We've adopted Swagger. As I mentioned, I have some other blog posts that talk about using Swagger in the client and demonstrate some code where I consume some things from Sync Gateway and implement some cool stuff on the server side with that. Go ahead and check that out at blog.couchbase.com. You'll find more information about Swagger and the Swagger spec that we use, a link for it in a blog post there that goes along with this video. And thanks for watching.